The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three star systems. A massive station where representatives from over 200 civilizations gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. Today, the chamber was full, and the air itself seemed heavy with tension. Ambassador Zethrix of the Velthri Dominion stood at the central platform. His body was made of living crystal, and it shifted colors as he spoke. Right now, it glowed an angry orange. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into hundreds of languages. "We are here to discuss the human problem," Zethrix announced. "For too long, we have allowed this weak species to sit among us as equals. They do not deserve that honor." In the human section of the chamber, Ambassador Linda Morrison sat perfectly still. She was a woman of 53 years, with gray hair pulled back in a simple style and eyes that had seen too much. Beside her sat Admiral Samuel Price, a tall man with dark skin and a face that showed no emotion. They had been expecting this moment for months. The Corvani delegation clicked their approval. The Corvani were insect-like creatures, each one standing 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and mandibles that could crush steel. Their high commander, a massive warrior named Vroxus, rose to speak. "The humans refused to join our attack on the Draven swarm," Vraxus said, his translator turning his clicks and hisses into words. 17 of our worlds have burned. 243 of our ships have been destroyed. And the humans did nothing. They hid behind their borders and watched us die." More voices joined the accusations. The Silthine beings made of pure energy who lived for thousands of years pulsed with contempt. The Moravaks, a species of warriors who had conquered half a galaxy before joining the council, laughed openly at the human delegation. "Look at them," said the Moravaks general, a scarred veteran named Koth. "Small, soft, no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They are prey animals pretending to be predators." Linda Morrison remained calm. She had heard worse. She had survived worse. Zethrix continued his speech. "Humanity maintains the smallest military fleet of any spacefaring civilization in this council. They have never engaged in a single offensive campaign. They have never conquered a world. They have never proven themselves in battle." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I believe they are cowards. I believe they fear war because they know they cannot win." The chamber erupted in agreement. Species that had fought each other for millennia now united in their contempt for humanity. The noise was overwhelming. A wall of sound that crashed against the human delegation like a physical force. Admiral Price leaned toward Linda. "How much longer?" he asked quietly. "Let them finish," she replied. "They need to say everything they want to say. Then it will be our turn." Zethrix raised his crystalline arms, and the chamber slowly fell silent. "I propose that humanity be removed from the Galactic Council. They offer nothing. They contribute nothing. They are nothing." "Seconded," Vraxus clicked. "Seconded," Koth growled. One by one, delegations added their voices to the motion. The Silthine, the Moravaks, the Corvani, even the Peleni, a peaceful species of scholars who rarely involve themselves in politics, voted against humanity. Finally, the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had died out long ago, turned to the human delegation. "Ambassador Morrison, you have the right to respond before the vote is finalized. Do you wish to speak?" Linda stood slowly. She was not tall, but something about the way she carried herself made the entire chamber pay attention. She walked to the central platform, and Zethrix stepped aside, his crystal body flickering with amusement. "The council believes humanity fears war," Linda said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You believe we are weak? You believe we hide because we cannot fight?" She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. "You are wrong." Laughter erupted from the Moravak section. Koth slapped his massive hand against his podium. "Brave words from a species that has never shed blood in conquest." "We have shed blood," Linda replied. "More than you can imagine. but not in conquest. Never in conquest. She turned to Admiral Price and nodded. The Admiral pressed a small device on the table before him, and the chamber's central holographic display flickered to life. Suddenly, the delegates were no longer looking at empty space. They were looking at a planet. Blue oceans, green countenance, white clouds. "This is Earth," Linda said. "Our homeworld. What you are about to see is our history, not the history we share with outsiders. The history we keep to ourselves. The history that made us what we are." The hologram zoomed in, focusing on a continent, then a nation, then a city. The city was burning. 80 of your standard cycles ago, our species had not yet reached the stars. We were confined to a single planet, 7.8 billion of us, all crowded onto one small world. Linda's voice remained steady, but there was something underneath it. Something dark. And we were very, very good at killing each other. The image shifted. More cities. More fire. Bodies in the streets. Soldiers fighting with weapons that looked primitive compared to the plasma rifles and graviton cannons the Council species used, but the scale of destruction was immense. "This was called the First World War," Linda said. 17 million dead. The weapons were simple. Explosive projectiles. Chemical agents that burned the lungs. Bladed weapons for when soldiers got close enough to see each other's eyes. Sethrix made a sound of confusion. "You killed 17 million of your own species? With primitive weapons? Over what territory?" "A few hundred square kilometers at first. Then the war spread. It always spreads." Linda looked directly at the Velthari ambassador. By the end, entire nations had been destroyed. An entire generation of young men had been erased. And that was just the beginning. The hologram changed again. This time, the destruction was different. More organized. More systematic. Factories producing weapons. Trains carrying people to camps where they would never leave.
Ash.
20 years later, we did it again. The Second World War. 70 to 85 million dead. We do not have exact numbers because entire populations were erased so completely that we cannot count them. At 85 million people. On one planet, in 6 years, the chamber had grown very quiet. The Corvani had stopped clicking. The Moravax had stopped laughing. Even the Silthine had dimmed their light. "Call us cowards," Linda said. "You say we fear war. But you do not understand what war means to us. You fight for territory, for resources, for honor." She shook her head slowly. "We fight to survive. And when we fight, we do not stop until the enemy is gone. Not defeated, not conquered, gone." She looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the eyes of every delegate who dared to look back. "You wanted to know why humanity avoids war? Now you will learn. And when you have learned, you will understand why we made that choice. Not because we are weak, because we remember what happens when we are strong." The hologram continued to display images of Earth's violent past, and the Galactic Council watched in growing horror as the true history of humanity began to unfold. The holographic display continued to show images that no species in the chamber had ever seen before. Cities reduced to rubble, fields covered with bodies, ships sinking beneath dark waters while thousands of soldiers drowned. The scale of destruction was beyond anything the Galactic Council had imagined possible for a species that had not yet discovered space travel. Admiral Samuel Price stood and walked to join Ambassador Morrison at the central platform. His voice was deep and steady, the voice of a man who had spent decades learning how to deliver terrible news without flinching. "The Second World War ended in a way that changed our species forever," he said. "We discovered something. A power that had been hidden in the smallest building blocks of the universe. We learned how to split the atom." The hologram shifted to show a single aircraft flying high above a city. The city was beautiful, filled with traditional buildings and temples. People walked through the streets, going about their daily lives. They did not know that in a few seconds everything would change. A single bomb fell from the aircraft. It was small, almost insignificant compared to the massive warships the Council species used. It tumbled through the air, falling toward the city center, and then there was light. The explosion was unlike anything the delegates had ever seen. It was not the clean, precise destruction of an orbital strike. It was raw power, uncontrolled and absolute. A ball of fire expanded outward, vaporizing everything it touched. Buildings disappeared. People disappeared. The very earth disappeared. Replaced by a crater of melted glass and ash, the Corvani High Commander made a sound that his translator could not interpret. The Silthene contracted into tight balls of dimmed light. Even the Moravaks, who had seen countless battles and boasted of their love for destruction, sat in stunned silence. Hiroshima, Admiral Price said. August 6th, 1945, by our calendar. One bomb. 80,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands more died in the following days and weeks from the radiation. Their skin fell off. Their hair fell out. They bled from the inside until there was nothing left. He let the image hang in the air for a long moment before continuing. 3 days later, we did it again. A city called Nagasaki. 40,000 dead instantly. And then we built more bombs. Bigger bombs. Better bombs. His voice carried no pride, only a deep and terrible sadness. Within 20 years, we had enough nuclear weapons to destroy our planet several times over. 2 nations pointed these weapons at each other and waited. For 40 years, every person on Earth lived with the knowledge that any day could be their last. Any moment, someone could press a button, and our entire species would end. Zithrik stepped forward, his crystal body now a pale, sickly green. You aimed weapons of planetary destruction at yourselves? Your own species? Yes. Why? Admiral Price looked at the Velthari ambassador with eyes that held memories of things no one should have to remember. Because we were afraid. Because we were angry. Because we could. He paused. Because that is what humans do when we go to war. We do not fight to win. We fight to end. And we do not care if we end ourselves in the process. Ambassador Morrison stepped forward again. You asked why we did not join your coalition against the Draven Swarm? You accused us of cowardice. But the truth is much simpler. She gestured at the hologram, which now showed the Earth surrounded by a network of orbital weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a continent. We did not join because we knew what would happen if we did. We would not fight the Draven the way you fight them. We would not capture their worlds or negotiate their surrender. We would erase them. Every ship, every station, every world they have ever touched. We would hunt them across the galaxy until nothing remained. The chamber was absolutely silent. Not a click, not a hiss, not a whisper. And then Morrison continued, when the Draven were gone, we would look around and see who else threatened us. Who else might become a danger? Who else needed to be erased? She shook her head slowly. That is what war does to us. That is why we avoid it. Not because we cannot fight, because we cannot stop. High Commander Vraxis rose from his position, his massive body moving with unexpected grace. You speak of restraint as if it is a virtue. But restraint without power is meaningless. You claim you could destroy the Draven. Prove it. Admiral Price nodded slowly. 3 weeks ago, a Draven scout fleet entered a system we had claimed for a research station. 27 ships. 14,000 drones. We received no report of this engagement, Vraxis said, because there was nothing to report. The battle lasted 11 minutes. We lost no ships. We lost no personnel. Price pulled up a new display, showing sensor logs from the engagement. The Draven lost everything. The logs showed the Draven fleet entering the system, spreading out in their standard attack formation. Then, one by one, the ships simply vanished. No explosions. No debris. No escape pods. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if they had never existed at all. Gravitational compression warheads, Price explained. Each one creates a localized singularity. A tiny black hole that exists for less than a second. Long enough to consume everything within a 5-kilometer radius. short enough that the singularity evaporates before it can cause any lasting damage to the surrounding space. It's impossible, Koth growled. Such weapons would require faster-than-light delivery systems. The physics alone would take centuries to solve. We solved them 60 years ago. We simply never told anyone. The Moravac's general fell silent, and for the first time, his scarred face showed something other than contempt. It showed fear, Ambassador. Morrison looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. These were the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had conquered worlds, destroyed fleets, built empires that spanned star systems, and now they sat in silence, staring at the representatives of a species they had dismissed as weak and cowardly. "We have more," she said quietly. "Weapons you cannot imagine. Weapons we built because we've spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other. Weapons we have never used because we remember what happened the last time we did. You wanted to remove humanity from this council? You called us nothing. But now you know the truth. We are not nothing. We are something far more dangerous. We are a species that chose to be peaceful, and that choice is the only thing standing between you and what we could become." The hologram faded, leaving the chamber in darkness. No one spoke. No one moved. The Galactic Council had wanted to know why humanity feared war. Now they knew, and that knowledge had changed everything. The council speaker called a recess that was supposed to last 1 hour. It lasted 6. Delegations huddled in private chambers, speaking in hushed tones. Messages flew between star systems at faster-than-light speeds. Governments that had been preparing to vote humanity out of the council were suddenly reconsidering their positions in the human delegation's private quarters. Admiral Samuel Price stood by the viewport, watching the distant stars. Ambassador Linda Morrison sat at a small table, reviewing data on a tablet. Neither of them had spoken for nearly an hour. Finally, Linda broke the silence. "Do you think we went too far?" Samuel did not turn from the viewport. They needed to know. They were terrified. Some of them still are. Good. He finally turned to face her. "For 50 years we have tried to be good neighbors. We traded fairly. We negotiated peacefully. We helped where we could and stayed out of conflicts that were not ours. And what did it get us? Contempt, mockery, accusations of cowardice." He shook his head slowly. "They needed to understand that our peace is a choice, not a weakness." A chime sounded at the door. Linda checked the security display and raised an eyebrow. High Commander Vraxis, alone. Samuel moved to stand beside her. "Let him in." The door slid open, and the massive Corvani warrior entered. He had to duck to fit through the doorway, and even in the center of the room, his head nearly touched the ceiling. His compound eyes studied the two humans with an intensity that would have been frightening a few hours ago. Now, Linda noticed there was something else in his gaze. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. "I have commanded Corvani warriors for 300 of your years," Vraxis said, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into smooth speech. "I have fought in 47 major conflicts. I have killed with my own hands more enemies than most species will ever see. I have watched civilizations burn and empires fall." He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. "I have never been afraid of another species until today." Linda gestured to a chair that had been designed for larger visitors. "Please, sit." Vraxis lowered himself carefully, the chair creaking under his weight. "Your weapons. The gravitational compression technology. How long have you had it?" "The theory was developed about 70 years ago," Samuel said. "The first practical prototype was tested 62 years ago. We have been refining it ever since." "And you never used it?" "Not in any conflict, not even in defense." "We used it 3 weeks ago against the Draven." Vraxis waved one of his forearms dismissively. "That was not a conflict. That was an extermination. I mean real war. Prolonged engagement. Strategic campaigns. The kind of fighting that tests a species." Linda leaned forward. "Commander, we have not fought a real war in over 80 years. Not because we could not. Because we chose not to? Why?" It was a simple question, but the answer was not simple at all. Linda thought for a moment before responding. Well, I grats out well, or I got out, I died ever, I can write, I want to write, I can, I want to, I want to, She was born during what we called the Cold War, the 40 years when two nations pointed nuclear weapons at each other. She told me about hiding under her desk at school, practicing for an attack that could come at any moment. She told me about the fear that lived in everyone's hearts, every day for her entire childhood. Linda paused, remembering the old woman's face, the way her eyes would go distant when she spoke of those times. She told me that living with that fear changed something inside people. It made them understand, really understand, that some things are more important than winning. What things? Surviving, growing, building something that lasts. Linda met the Corvani commander's compound eyes. The species that came before us, the humans who fought those terrible wars, they gave us a gift. They showed us what happens when we let our worst instincts take control, and we decided, as a species, that we would never let that happen again. Vraxis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost thoughtful. The Corvani have a similar story. Long ago, before we reached the stars, our hives fought each other constantly. Millions died in wars over territory, over resources, over the right to breed. We nearly destroyed ourselves. What changed? The Moravax came. Vrax's mandibles clicked in what might have been a bitter laugh. They arrived in their ships, saw our divided world, and decided to conquer us. We were too busy fighting each other to resist. They enslaved us for 300 years. When we finally won our freedom, we had learned the same lesson your species learned. Unity is survival. Division is death. Samuel nodded slowly. Then you understand. I understand that you have the power to destroy the Draven swarm. I understand that you have chosen not to use it. Vraxus leaned forward, his massive form casting AS. Hado over the two humans. What I do not understand is why you revealed this to the council. You could have kept your secrets. You could have let us vote you out and continued living in peace on the edges of known space. Why show us what you can do? Linda stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the same stars Samuel had been watching earlier. Because 17 worlds have burned. Because 243 ships full of people who were just trying to protect their homes have been destroyed. Because somewhere in this galaxy, there are children who will never see their parents again because no one could stop the Draven. She turned back to face Vraxis. We did not reveal our capabilities to threaten you. We revealed them because we are tired of watching people die while we do nothing. We are tired of pretending to be weak while the strong prey on the innocent. We are tired of peace that is built on other species suffering. Then you will fight. If we must, but not the way you fight. Linda's voice hardened. We will not send our soldiers to die in prolonged campaigns. We will not trade worlds for strategic advantage. We will not accept acceptable losses. She paused. If humanity goes to war with the Draven, we will end them. Completely, absolutely, and anyone who stands in our way will share their fate. Vraxis rose slowly, his massive body unfolding to its full height. He looked down at the two humans, and for a moment, his compound eyes reflected something ancient and knowing. The Corvani have a saying, he said. The most dangerous warrior is not the one who loves battle. It is the one who hates it so much that he will do anything to end it quickly. He dipped his head in a gesture of respect. I believe I finally understand humanity. Turned and walked toward the door, then paused. The council will reconvene in 2 hours. I will speak in your favor. I do not know if it will be enough, but I will try." "Why?" Samuel asked. Roxas looked back over his shoulder. "Because you told us the truth when you could have lied. Because you showed us your strength when you could have hidden it. And because I have seen enough war to know that sometimes the best ally is not the one who fights the hardest. It is the one who knows when not to fight at all." The door closed behind him, leaving the two humans alone with their thoughts and the distant, uncaring stars. When the council reconvened, the chamber felt different. The hostility that had filled the air before the recess had been replaced by something else. Uncertainty, perhaps, or fear. Or the beginning of understanding. Ambassador Zethrix of the Velthri Dominion was the first to speak. His crystalline body had shifted to a deep blue, color that Linda Morrison had learned to associate with humility and reflection. His voice was quieter than before, lacking the confident contempt that had marked his earlier accusations. "Before the recess, I called humanity cowards. I said they feared war because they could not win it." He paused, his crystal form flickering. "I was wrong. I have studied the records they shared. I have consulted with our scientists. The weapons they described, the gravitational compression technology, it is real. And it is more powerful than anything we have ever developed." The chamber stirred with murmurs and whispers. Zethrix raised his arms for silence. "I have also studied their history. The wars they fought, the destruction they caused, the weapons they built." His voice dropped lower. "They nearly destroyed themselves. Not once, not twice, but over and over again throughout their entire history. They are a species that learned to kill on a scale we cannot imagine, using nothing but their own hands and the resources of a single planet." Koth, the Morvax general, rose from his seat. His scarred face was thoughtful, which was unusual for a species known more for action than reflection. "I have spent my life fighting. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have killed more enemies than I can count. And I tell you now, the Morvax are not afraid of any species in this council." He paused, his eyes finding the human delegation. "But what the humans showed us today, that is something different. That is not strength. That is madness. Beautiful, terrible madness that burns everything it touches." "Oh." "Speak as if that is admirable," one of the Silthine delegates pulsed. "Speak as a warrior who recognizes another warrior. Turn to face the energy being. You have lived for thousands of years. You have seen empires rise and fall. But have you ever seen a species that chose to stop? That looked at the power they had built and decided not to use it?" The Silthine flickered but did not respond. High Commander Vraxis rose next. He had spoken to the human delegates privately, and now he addressed the entire council with the weight of that conversation behind his words. 300 cycles ago, my species was enslaved. We were conquered because we were divided, because we spent our strength fighting each other instead of the true enemy. When we won our freedom, we swore that we would never be weak again." His compound eyes swept across the chamber. "But the humans have taught me something today. Strength is not just the ability to destroy, it is also the ability to choose not to destroy." Linda Morrison stood. The chamber fell silent, every eye and sensor focused on the small human woman who had revealed such terrible truths. "Hey, we did not come here to threaten you," she said. "We did not show you our history to make you afraid. We showed you because you deserve to know who we really are." She walked slowly toward the central platform, her footsteps echoing in the quiet chamber. "For 50 years, humanity has been a member of this council. We have traded with you. We have shared knowledge with you. We have helped where we could and stayed out of conflicts that were not ours. And in all that time, you never knew what we were capable of." She reached the platform and turned to face the assembled delegates. "Now you know. And now you have a choice to make. You can fear us. You can try to isolate us or destroy us before we become a threat. Many species would make that choice." And she paused. "Or you can trust us. You can believe that the same restraint that has kept us peaceful for 80 years will continue. You can accept us as allies instead of enemies. And if we choose the first option? Zithrix asked. If we decide that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to exist, Admiral Price stood and walked to join Linda on the platform. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Then you will learn the same lesson the Draven are about to learn. Humanity does not start wars, but we finish them. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded that humanity be expelled immediately. Others called for alliance and cooperation. The Moravaks seemed torn between their warrior instincts and their newfound respect for human capabilities. The Corvani clicked and hissed in rapid debate. Through it all, Linda and Samuel stood on the central platform waiting. They had said what they needed to say. Now the decision belonged to the council. Finally, the council speaker restored order. The ancient being's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. We will put it to a vote. The motion to remove humanity from the Galactic Council. All in favor? Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The motion that had seemed certain to pass just hours ago now hung in the air, unwanted and alone. All opposed? Slowly, hands and appendages and energy fields rose throughout the chamber. The Corvani, the Moravaks, the Velthari, even the Silthine, who rarely voted on anything, pulsed their agreement. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council declared their opposition to the motion. The motion fails, the council speaker announced. Humanity remains a member of the Galactic Council. But Linda knew that this was not the end. It was barely the beginning. The council had accepted humanity, but acceptance and trust were not the same thing. It would take years, perhaps decades, to build the relationships that would make true alliance possible. And in the meantime, Draven Swarm was still out there. Still consuming, still growing, still moving toward the worlds of the council with mindless, hungry purpose. The vote was finished. But the real test was yet to come. As the delegates began to disperse, Ambassador Zithrix approached the human delegation. His crystalline form had shifted again, now showing swirls of blue and purple that suggested complex emotions the translator could not fully capture. I owe you an apology, he said. I judged your species without understanding you. That was wrong, Linda nodded. Thank you, Ambassador. But apologies are not what we need right now. What do you need? She looked past him, toward the viewport and the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Draven were moving. Somewhere out there, worlds were burning. We need to talk about what happens next. Because the Draven are not going to stop. And when they come for the worlds we have promised to protect, we need to be ready. She turned back to face him. All of us. Together. Zethrix's crystal body flickered with understanding. Then let us talk. The emergency session lasted 3 more days. During that time, the entire nature of the Galactic Council changed. Species that had been rivals for centuries found themselves sitting together, planning, cooperating. The human revelation had done something unexpected. It had united them. On the final day, Admiral Samuel Price stood before a gathering of military commanders from 12 different species. They had come to learn. They had come to understand. And most importantly, they had come to prepare. The Draven Swarm operates on simple principles, Samuel explained. Using the holographic display to show the alien fleet's movements over the past decade, they consume resources. They reproduce. They expand. They have no diplomacy, no culture, no desire for anything except growth. They are not evil. They are simply hungry. And that makes them more dangerous than any enemy you have ever faced. High Commander Vraxis clicked his agreement. We have tried to negotiate with them. We have tried to establish borders. They do not understand these concepts. They cannot understand them. Their biology does not allow for it.
Samuel zoomed in on a Draven hive ship, showing its internal structure.
Each individual drone is connected to the hive mind. They think as one organism, act as one organism, and die as one organism. Kill 1 million drones, and the hive barely notices. Kill the queen, and the entire swarm falls apart. General Koth leaned forward, his scarred face intense with interest. Then we target the queens. Simple. Not simple at all. The queens are protected by layers of defenses that make our most powerful warships look like toys. They have evolved specifically to survive the kind of attacks your species have tried. Samuel paused. But they have not evolved to survive us. The display changed, showing the human fleet. It was small compared to the massive armadas of the Corvani or Moravax, just 47 ships of various sizes. But the commanders in the room now knew what those ships could do. Our strategy is different from yours. You fight wars of attrition. You accept losses in exchange for gains. You measure victory in territory captured and enemies killed. Samuel shook his head. We do not fight that way. We identify the critical target, we develop the weapon to destroy it, and we end the threat in a single strike. And if the single strike fails, Zethrix asked, we make sure it does not fail. Ambassador Linda Morrison entered the chamber, followed by a group of human scientists and engineers. They carried tablets and holographic projectors, the tools of their trade. We have been analyzing the Draven Hive structure for the past 72 hours, she said. Working with data provided by the Corvani and Moravax, we have identified a vulnerability. The display shifted again, showing a complex diagram of neural pathways and energy flows. The queens communicate with their drones through a specialized organ that generates quantum-entangled signals. It allows instantaneous communication across any distance. But it also creates a dependency. The drones cannot function without regular signals from their queen. We know this, Vraxis said. We have tried to jam the signals. It does not work, because you are trying to block the signals. We are going to do something different. Linda nodded to one of the scientists, who pulled up a new diagram. We are going to broadcast our own signal. A signal that mimics the Queen's commands but tells the drones to shut down. The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, Koth began to laugh. It was not a mocking laugh, but one of genuine appreciation. You are going to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness, he said. You are going to make them kill themselves. We are going to give them peace, Linda corrected. They have been driven by hunger their entire existence. They have never known anything except the need to consume. We are going to give them silence, rest, an end to the endless hunger. And if it does not work, if the queens adapt, Samuel stepped forward again. Then we use the other option, the option that does not leave anything behind to adapt. No one needed to ask what he meant. They had all seen the sensor logs from the human engagement with the Draven scout fleet. 27 ships, gone in 11 minutes. No debris, no survivors. No chance. Over the next 3 months, the combined forces of the Galactic Council prepared for the largest military operation in recorded history. Human scientists worked alongside Corvani engineers. Moravax warriors trained with human special forces. And Velthari diplomats coordinated the logistics of moving fleets across thousands of light years. The Draven, he did not know what was coming. They continued their advance, consuming world after world, growing stronger with each conquest. They had no concept of the alliance forming against them. They had no understanding of the species that had once nearly destroyed itself and had learned from that destruction when the attack came. It was swift and precise. Human ships, supported by Corvani dreadnoughts and Moravax assault carriers, struck at 3 hive fleets simultaneously. The new signal technology worked exactly as designed. Millions of drones simply stopped, their hunger silenced for the first time in their existence. Those that did not respond were eliminated by gravitational compression warheads that left nothing behind, in a single day. The Draven swarm lost half its fighting strength. In a week, the remaining queens sued for something they had never considered before, peace. The negotiations were led by Ambassador Linda Morrison. She did not demand tribute or territory. She did not seek revenge for the worlds that had burned. She offered something far more valuable, a place for the Draven in the Galactic Council, a chance to be something more than hungry, a chance to grow and change and become part of the community of civilizations. Not everyone agreed with her approach. The Moravax wanted blood. The Corvani wanted security guarantees that would take decades to fulfill. Even some humans thought she was being too soft on an enemy that had killed millions. But Linda remembered what her grandmother had told her. All those years ago, she remembered the stories of the Cold War, the fear that had lived in everyone's hearts, the children hiding under their desks, waiting for bombs that might never fall. "We have a choice," she told the council in her final address. "We can destroy the Draven. We have the power. We have the weapons. We could end them completely, erase them from the galaxy as if they had never existed." She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. "Or we can try something different. We can try to make them our partners instead of our enemies. We can try to build something that lasts." High Commander Vraxis rose to support her. 300 cycles ago, the Moravax could have exterminated my species. They chose enslavement instead. When we won our freedom, we could have sought revenge. We chose alliance. He looked at General Koth, who nodded slowly. "The humans are offering the Draven the same chance. The chance to be better than their worst instincts." The vote was close, but in the end, the council agreed. The Draven would be given a territory of their own, resources to satisfy their hunger, and guidance to help them develop beyond their biological imperatives. It would take generations, but change was possible. The humans had proven that. As Linda Morrison left the chamber for the last time, Admiral Samuel Price fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for a while, watching the stars through the viewports. "Do you think it will work?" he finally asked. "The Draven Alliance?" Linda smiled, and for a moment, she looked very much like the grandmother who had told her stories about the old days. "I do not know, but we have to try. That is what makes us human. We know exactly how dark we can become, and we choose to reach for the light anyway." Samuel nodded slowly. "My grandfather used to say something similar. He was a soldier, fought in one of our last major wars. He said the bravest thing a warrior can do is put down his weapon and trust that peace is possible. Smart man. Died believing that humanity would reach the stars someday, that we would find our place among other civilizations." Oh. Samuel looked out at the distant galaxies, the endless possibilities waiting to be explored. "I think he would be proud of what we have done here." Linda put her hand on his arm. "I think he would be, and I think this is just the beginning." The Galactic Council had learned to fear humanity. Then they had learned to respect humanity. And now, slowly, they were learning to trust humanity. Not because humans were the strongest or the most numerous or the most advanced, but because they had looked into the abyss of their own destruction and chosen to step back, because they had learned that true strength was not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to. The stars continued to turn, different to the small dramas of the species that lived among them. But those species were no longer quite as small as they had been. They were growing, changing, becoming something new in humanity. The species that had once feared itself more than any enemy was leading the way.